What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. We've got a big show for you here today. We've got the Week 14 preview. We've got Justin Boone. We've got the six-pack of questions. Tons of really fascinating things to break down for a big, important slate this week. But before we get into all of that, we've got to recap Thursday Night Football. Oh, baby, it lived up to the expectations. We've got Lions 44, Cowboys 30 here. We expected this one to be a banger. It was a banger. The Lions showed up here, man. We're going to break down the Lions first. We always start with the winners here. That's what we're going to do. Big, important game here. Pretty much a loser leaves town for the most part. If you're looking at the playoff odds across all of the various sites, they were showing it on the Thursday night broadcast. Obviously, there's plenty others out there. Odds definitely look a lot better for the winner of this game than the loser. That was what Nate and I talked about with the preview. That's the stakes. That was the table that we were setting here. The Lions pull it off at home against the Cowboys. They score 44 points. A lot of impressive performances here from a variety of different players, but we've got to start with Jahmyr Gibbs. We're showing him on the screen right now. Jahmyr Gibbs, since week 7, has just decided to drop a 30-plus point fantasy hammer every other week. I mean, he's just been unbelievable ever since week 7. So week 7, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 35.3 points. Next week, 4.3, Minnesota Vikings. That would be the final game that John Morton called plays. 36.7 against the Commanders, 17.1 against the Eagles, 49.9 against the damn Giants, 10 points on Thanksgiving against the Packers, and then 33.5 points tonight against the Dallas Cowboys. And it was interesting how it got done for Jahmyr Gibbs, a variety of different ways here. And by the way, also, David Montgomery got in the mix here too for a 35-yard scamper down the field, a rushing touchdown for him as well. So 4 rushing touchdowns allowed by the Dallas Cowboys tonight. And that wasn't even the biggest problem with the Cowboys defense. We'll get to them in just a moment here. They really struggled much more as a passing unit than a run stop unit. For the most part, they kind of kept some of the plays at bay. They didn't have a ton of big gashes on the night, although the Lions finished with a 50% rushing success rate on the evening. So certainly it did not go well from that standpoint. I think a lot of that had to do with all of the touchdowns there. 0.49 EPA per rush in this game. Again, 4 rushing touchdowns. That's going to look pretty good for you. 44% of their runs went for a first down or a touchdown, did the Detroit Lions. They just didn't have a bunch of like 10-yard runs here. Only 22% of their runs went for 10 plus yards. But when they did get those big plays on the ground from Jahmyr Gibbs, it was mostly because they lined up in jumbo with an extra offensive lineman, and that is how they had to. That's how they got to the big plays in the run game, which is important because at the start of this game, I was so nervous about the Detroit Lions interior offensive line. Looked like they did some shuffling with that unit in the second half. I have to go back and look at the snap counts, but I think they were rotating in and out some different personnel there. But regardless, the big thing that they did was they got Dan Skipper on the field. They got that 6 offensive linemen on the field, and that was where Jahmyr Gibbs got all 3 of his rushing touchdowns came on jumbo formations, according to Next Gen Stats. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs also was super impactful in the passing game, which talked about that on Thursday, or talked about that on the Thursday night preview show with Nate, that he was going to be active in the passing game. I thought that would be because Amon-Ra St. Brown was not going to be playing. He was playing, and yet still Jahmyr Gibbs, 7 catches on 7 targets, 77 yards, 11 yards per reception, 3 first downs as a receiver as well. And man, he just made some unbelievable plays. I say this a lot on the show. I think I've been saying it since the end of last year. Every few games you get a moment from Jahmyr Gibbs where you just think he is the best player in the sport. There were several of those plays tonight where he's embarrassing Cowboys defenders in the open field. That just is what it is, man. He's a really difficult player to defend. What we're showing on the screen right now, Lions running back Jahmyr Gibbs, the first NFL player since Hall of Fame running back Edgerrin James to have 4 3+ touchdown games in his first 3 NFL seasons. So yeah, again, he's just that guy. He's like that, man. He's such a fun player. He's an excellent sustaining, grinded out runner, and he is a huge big play threat in the run game and the passing game. It felt like this was going to be a big Jahmyr Gibbs night. It was so impressive. Like I said, though, Dave Montgomery did get into the mix here for only 6 carries, but he made the most of them, 60 yards on those carries, including the 35-yard touchdown. It is really tough with David Montgomery in fantasy. I have one David Montgomery team where he just kind of fell to me in the draft. He wasn't a player I was actively targeting at all. Just if he was there and he's like the highest guy in my queue, I guess I'm going to go ahead and take him. This team, ideally, he was going to be my fourth running back behind, because people just let running backs fall in some of these leagues sometimes. He's supposed to be my fourth running back behind Bucky Irving, Travis Etienne, and Alvin Kamara. So obviously Kamara's out. I'm like, am I playing David Montgomery in this matchup? I don't think he's going to touch a ball. I think it's going to be a big Jahmyr Gibbs game. Of course, he scores a touchdown. You just never know when to play the guy at this point. So it is difficult with David Montgomery. And I'm struggling with that, and this is supposed to be my quote job, so I'm sure people out there are struggling as well. Talk about the Lions passing game here a little bit. To start, I do think that the alarm bells were off early for me, that I thought, oh man, the Cowboys, they have Goff in that blender early, and you guys know what I mean. If you've watched Goff, you know that when you can heat him up, when you can get pressure on him, when you can especially get pressure up the middle, and he's not a creative player in the pocket at all. He can't really redirect under pressure, change the arm angles. It's just he is what he is, and he's great at what he does. I really like Jared Goff as a quarterback, but there are limitations to his game when he's under pressure. I don't even think he's like a wallflower under pressure or anything like that. I just think, again, there are limitations to his game when he gets under pressure, and you felt that early on in this game, but as the night wore on, I think they were really able to manage around it. I think Dan Campbell, this was a good Dan Campbell game, both because of the players that he targeted. Siobhan Revell, the Cowboys rookie corner, he was in the microscope for Dan Campbell pretty much all night. But that was a part of it. I also think that you saw them really get to the under center play action game as this one wore on as well. Jared Goff on play action, 3.1 average time to throw. So that's pretty standard when you're looking at the play action stuff. 10.4 adjusted yards per attempt. Really good on play action, 50% success rate. He was that was really dialed in. That really helped a lot when you were thinking about this Lions pass game. How was it going to look a little bit better, as the game wore on? 8 attempts out of play action, 6 completions. That was really efficient stuff for them. They had a couple of big time moments there where they got some catch and run plays as well. So they took advantage of the area where Dallas is weak, which is their pass defense. And there were just holes and cavities in the middle of the field. And the Cowboys defensive scheme, again, we can hammer the point, and we have on this show many times, that they're not the same defense that they were to start the season, where they're just getting run on left and right. Again, I know they gave up a big game to Jahmyr Gibbs tonight in certain areas. That's Jahmyr Gibbs, man. He's, like I said, one of the best players in the sport. That's going to happen. But for the most part, it's still a revitalized run defense. Quentin Williams is awesome. He can be disruptive, but the coverage scheme on the back end, I think, is just bad. It's the personnel's not good. I think Deron Bland is way too up and down. There were really bad moments for him tonight, but Siobhan Revell was in these situations where, it's just this soft zone stuff. I don't really think it really fits his game at all. And if you're going to play that, cover 2 stuff, you're going to leave those cavities in the middle of the field when you also have very up and down linebacker play. And that felt like a problem all night long for this Cowboys defense when it came to the crossers, the middle of the field work with both Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. St. Brown, again, he comes in here, and I certainly did not expect him to play. I was preparing as if he was not going to play in this one. Well, he ran a route on 91% of the dropbacks. He was not a ton of limitations there. I mean, he wasn't fully maybe in the complete game plan. I think obviously Jamison Williams, they both had the same amount of targets here, 29% of the targets. JMO, just obviously those came further downfield because of course they did. It just, to me, I did not expect that to happen, and it did. So shout out to Amon-Ra St. Brown. What a freaking badass. What a warrior. That was great to see. It was nice to see Jamison Williams still have a big game though. 97 yards, 7 catches for 96 yards. He, again, made many impressive plays, I thought, on crossing routes, in breakers. That's really where you want to get Jamison Williams the football. And, J-Mo's always going to be volatile. He's going to be up and down, but you can totally live with that if he is your kind of if you got depending on the team construction around him, you can live with that. I mean, especially if he's like your wide receiver 3, which I think that's kind of always the range where he's going to be drafted in fantasy, just because people know about the 0 spot games. They know that's going to happen, right? So I think that you can live with that when you're drafting Jameson Williams. That you're gonna live with that volatility because the reward is really there. And I push back on the narrative that he was running a bunch of go routes and stuff like that early on in the season. He was running about the same amount of go routes as he did previously. Like, there wasn't a ton of changes in his route tree. It's just the way they are getting him the football, which, I mean, again, he had a 0 game not too long ago with Dan Campbell as a play caller. Like, Dan Campbell didn't fix everything here, but he's definitely found a way to get to some of the better plays in the passing game that highlight Jameson Williams' strengths, as we're talking about, hey, we can get him on the front side on these dig routes as opposed to the backside. Last year, he's on the backside dig, and Jared Goff just had much more time to work back to that progression. We don't have that same amount of time because of the state of the offensive line this year. So I really like the way that James Williams is being used right now. I think he's going to continue to be somebody you play every single week, and you just kind of accept the consequences. If he has a slow game, you know that's coming, but the reward is clearly there for him. And certainly I want to see these last 2 weeks, he's been a little boosted because St. Brown hasn't been, he missed most of last week's game, and he's not 100% healthy here, but I think Jameson is really good in his role and should continue to be used in that role going forward. So certainly someone, like I said, a slow game is coming, but this was a nice game for him tonight, and he's continued to show that working him over the middle of the field, working against zone, working on the in-breakers, that's really what it's all about, man. That's where Jameson Williams' game is best expressed, although he did have a pretty nice deceleration moment on a curl route, deep hook route there. That was good to see for Jameson Williams. So yeah, impressive performance from the Lions here, and they continue to try to make a push towards the playoffs, and their players in fantasy, we know who they are. Although I'd be remiss if I left the Lions here without mentioning Isaac Tesla. Touchdown, baby. That was pretty cool. Isaac Tesla, not a big part of the game plan, of course, only 3 targets on the night, but he did run a route on 80% of the dropbacks, only targeted on 10.7% of those routes. Again, not going to be a featured player as long as J-Mo and Amon-Ra St. Brown are healthy, but played more than any of the tight ends. There's definitely something to his game. He might only ever be kind of a low volume, high snap type player. That's fine. I think he can have his uses for the Lions in that role. So great to see him grab a touchdown there. And again, it was a pretty rough moment for Siobhan Revell on that one. Let's talk about the Cowboys here. Okay, a lot of interesting things to talk about on the Cowboys offense. I do think that their offense just didn't quite get off to the start maybe that I wanted outside of CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, of course, was cooking in this game. He was having an unbelievable night. He was smoking man coverage just like you'd expect him to. He was getting great mismatches, getting over on DJ Reed. Really impressive night for CeeDee Lamb. Unfortunately, it ends on a concussion where he's trying to come down with a difficult catch in the end zone, doesn't come down with it. Scary moment afterwards. He was quickly ruled out, which makes me certainly nervous about his availability next week. Typically guys don't come back the next week after the concussion, and the fact he was ruled out so quickly, again, I'd be a little bit nervous about Lamb's availability in the next game. That I think is going to be questionable, and man, I think he was just going to have a monster night tonight. Like I said, 6 catches, 121 yards on 8 targets before leaving the game here. It's a shame. It is a shame. But in his absence, it wasn't George Pickens that stepped up. Actually, kind of if we're being honest for a second, not the best George Pickens game here tonight. I've really been enjoying the George Pickens experience this year. He's a guy I wanted in a lot of leagues, was able to get in a few of them, but not ideal. Not ideal. George Pickens finished with single-digit fantasy points for the first time since week 1 as Michael Florio of the NFL Network. Michael F. Florio, baby, of the NFL Network notes here. Yeah, and some of that was, look, you could see on the Prime Vision broadcast, like they're got a press corner right there up on George Pickens' grill. So they're trying to not allow him the inside leverage to get those slants that he was obviously smashing the Chiefs on last week, and he's been talking about the slant routes and all this stuff. I've been talking about the slant routes. Everybody's been talking about it. The Lions knew it. They were not going to allow him to have that. And they also, once Lamb was out, totally felt comfortable putting a safety over the top of George Pickens' side, just trying to take him out of that game, make Dak look elsewhere. And Dak did look elsewhere. But before we get to that, again, just also worth noting that Pickens, I think, left some plays on the field tonight too, like some rough moments at the catch point. He got called for an illegal pick play, and I think he was kind of out of it on the next play, like irritated about it. I'd be irritated about the call too. That's fine. Bad officiating game. I'll just get that out here. Bad officiating game on a variety of reasons that I won't rant and rave about here because nobody cares. But it was rough. We can say it. We can agree on that. But yeah, George, I thought was out of it on the next play and just kind of left a play on the field there. So not the best George Pickens game in the box score, or I thought watching it live. The guy who stepped up though, freaking Ryan Flournoy. How about that, man? Ryan Flournoy had an awesome game tonight. I've got producer Colin hitting me up, messages over and over again about, hey, you see who's doing this? I got freaking Nate Tice out there tweeting a video. Just not even a quote tweet. Just he tweeted the video and saying chart him, as we're showing on the screen. And I will say, again, because we can watch with the Next Gen Stats broadcast there, like, he was running some really nice routes. Obviously, the double move off under center play action from Dak Prescott there, or at least I believe it might have just straight drop back under center. It wasn't play action, just straight drop back under center, double move on the outside. Ryan Flournoy leaves the defender in the dust. He's wide open. He walks in the touchdown. But beyond that, man, running some really good routes. Oh my God. Could you imagine if this, what we're showing on the screen right now, Jerry Jones is going to use this Flournoy game, the 100+ yards, as a reason not to pay George Pickens? I wouldn't do that because I would want to get all three of these guys on the field, man. Ryan Flournoy moving around the formation. He's making plays in the slide. He's making plays outside, 13 targets, 9 catches, 115 yards. And like I said, I thought he was, running some real deal routes in this game. Looked really good to me, settling over the middle of the field. I'm interested. I will say, I submit. I'm interested in the Flournoy stuff. I think he is a fascinating player to consider. I am going to probably do some work on him, do a little deep dive there. I mean, I charted Tyrell Shavers at one point this year. I can probably chart some Ryan Flournoy. So, Colin had a rough night tonight. There's something for him. Maybe we'll put together a reception perception on Ryan Flournoy, and maybe that'll heal like 5% of the wounds. But you got Nate Tice coming down on me on the internet like this. I gotta maybe submit and do a little Ryan Flournoy charting. We'll see. Anyways, don't know that Ryan Flournoy is going to be a massive fantasy factor, but if CeeDee Lamb's out next week and he is that move around guy, George Pickens, 4.8% snaps in the slot here. They do not really move him around regardless. We saw that when CeeDee was out earlier. It's just George Pickens stays in that X receiver role for the most part. Flournoy is going to play a lot of snaps. He ran a route on 69% of the dropbacks here, behind only Pickens and Jake Ferguson at 80%. I think he could be in consideration. As this heads heads into its next game, which will be against the Minnesota Vikings. So that will be, again, that's an interesting one, right? You think about the Vikings defense, play a lot of too high, a lot of zone. They're going to probably try to do a lot of what, the bracket coverages against George Pickens. That might leave some openings for Ryan Flournoy. So should be interesting. There. Again, I don't know that he's a big fantasy factor, but something that stood out there to me for sure. Otherwise, Cowboys had not a very explosive run game tonight. 11-yard long run. Definitely had some troubles on the offensive line too. Their backup left tackle got taken to work by Aiden Hutchinson a couple of times. But I thought this was a couple interceptions here, one of which got batted up in the air for Dak Prescott, but I thought this was a good Dak game overall, threw for a bunch of yards, of course, and he was really just, I thought, decisive of when to get out of the pocket and scramble a little bit too. 3 carries for 14 yards. Rather impressive night for Dak Prescott. All things considered, I thought. It wasn't perfect, like I said, but when he was under pressure, according to Next Gen Stats, 9 completions on 13 attempts, 166 yards, and a touchdown. 4th most passing yards under pressure in a game for Dak since 2018. He did take the 5 sacks, of course. So that was a part of it. The other interesting note from Dak, this is just such a classic Dak game. Targeting the seams, according to NGS, Prescott completed 20 of 24 passes for 209 yards. So very much, if you look at the passing chart, he is just slamming that middle of the field. Jake Ferguson catching a ton of passes here. Only 5 for 58 for Ferguson. Certainly felt like a lot more. That's for sure. All right, so this was a fun game. Really enjoyed watching it. We had a ton of points here, which we expected. The overhit, it was the highest total of the slate, and the overhit. A ton of guys got home in fantasy. Not everybody that we wanted. George Pickens, disappointing game. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb had a great game before going out. That was a bummer. Would have liked to see him complete that game, but really fun game, and we learned a lot about both teams. Cowboys definitely need a lot of help now. They need the Eagles to screw it up down the stretch, which, it's not impossible. Updated odds here. The Athletics playoff predictor model has them at a 9% chance to make postseason, 4% chance to win the division. They're going to need to win out, and they're going to need the Eagles to screw it up, which is not totally impossible. On the Lions side, their playoff odds go up to a 45% chance with this win. The division's pretty much done for them. They 8% chance to win the division. I don't think that's happening, but they can certainly get into a wild card here. Their upcoming schedule, they got the Rams next week. That's going to be tough, but then Steelers, Vikings, and Bears, definitely some winnable games down the stretch for Detroit. Just got to continue to hone that identity, get the run game a little bit more consistent, but as long as they've got these guys who can make big plays, I think they're going to be in a pretty good spot. All right, that's going to do it from us today. Thanks again to Toyota, the official automotive partner of the NFL, who's all in all season. And don't forget to check out Toyota game day giveaways for your chance to win.